Was the Fantastic Beasts series really that bad, or was it just not what you expected? That's what my guest and I will decide on today's episode of the Belated Binge Podcast, the re-binge podcast that doesn't take itself or the books too seriously. My name's Zach. I'm your host, revisiting some of the most iconic series in recent memory that I nearly missed out on, like Harry Potter, which, despite growing up with it, I didn't read through until my mid-20s. And today, I'm stoked to be joined by Juliana to reflect on Fantastic Beasts, the movies they were, what they could have been, and what they weren't. Let's do it.
The Belated Binge Podcast.
Before we get started, spoilers. Obviously. Language. Probably. Now, I want to introduce my guest for this episode. Say hi, Juliana!
Wow. That was pretty hype. I'm here for that, you know. I just came off the Falmouth road race, and I'm the person who, when I run in a road race, I scream at the people on the side of the road to yell louder because I'm running and I'm screaming, so they should be screaming back at me louder.
I'm actually, I felt like I had to put some inflection on it because I either want to do that or I want to give you like the ridiculously long intro of every credit that you possibly could have in the space, but I feel like your list is too long. So you got Juliana.
Woo!
That's what it's gonna be. You can go to the list.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you. I feel like I don't have really that many achievements, but I do enjoy being in like the Harry Potter like fantasy world creator space, so it's very exciting. But yeah, I mean, hello listeners. Juliana here. You might recognize my voice because you possibly could have listened to our episode that we had on my past podcast, now kind of retired Puffcast, where we had Zach on, and it's very exciting to finally be here. We've had this in the works for like such a long time, and I'm very excited to be here. And like Zach said, I do a lot of things in the Harry Potter space, mostly just like social media, doing collaborations with people, doing podcasts, going to conventions, doing paneling. You name it, I've probably done it. So
Well, didn't you have a stint at Mugglenet too? Do I remember that correctly?
I'm still working there too. I'm on the content team at Mugglenet too as well. So I help edit the like the backside of pages, like do the coding and stuff. So that's
only like the
do.
biggest publication in the Harry Potter space,
Yeah.
and you're just like, I still work there too, among all the other things.
Well, it was really nice because I got to, when I went to LeakyCon like 2 or 3 weekends ago now, I got to actually meet a lot of the people who I work with in person, which was really nice. So shout out to them. But yeah, no, I do work for Mugglenet too. I forget that I do all these things because I just like, and I have my other podcast with Jeff, which is Into the Fold, which is about the Grishaverse, which is, if anyone's seen the Shadow and Bone series on Netflix, it's the books that is based off of. But yeah, just a lot of things that I'm out there doing out in the world. So here I am today, though. Yeah,
I started to listen. I haven't read those books. I have not committed to reading them yet, but I did start listening to the first couple of episodes from way back when in 2021.
They're kind of old now.
But I felt like I had to, like, because if I'm gonna take on a new series of any kind, just even as a consumer, at this point in my life, I feel like I want to get a feel for it, for the content I'm gonna consume around it, because like that's the only way I can do it now. And I kind of want to get I figure there's nothing more accurate or like more reliable for whether something is any good than if you turn on a podcast and you're intrigued by the podcast, then like, oh, well, the material must be great. Like, so anyway.
Yeah, we've gotten a lot of people into that.
Today.
No, today we were talking about a different book series. Well, not really a book series, more or less, but a movie series that kind of went kaput after 3 movies that were promised to be 5, that were said to be in all these different countries, that ended up being in other different countries, and maybe had questionable like film quality possibly, and questionable storylines, and so Fantastic Beasts. If you hadn't guessed what it was, friends.
Yes, our goal for this episode is to answer Fantastic Beasts. Were they really that bad, or were they just not what you expected them to be? And so I figure we can start at the beginning.
Yeah.
What did you think that we were going to get after watching the first Fantastic Beasts movie, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yeah, so I'll start off with saying that I think the first movie is like genuinely a good movie as a
I agree.
standalone.
I agree.
Like you could watch that movie and never need another sequel and be absolutely fine.
Yeah.
And I thought we were going to get obviously more of the Tina, Newt, Jacob, Queenie storyline because in the actual first movie, they are our four main characters and they're like the new characters. And the movie is called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is a book that's written by Newt Scamander. So I thought because of all these context clues and what happened in the first movie, it was going to be a Newt Scamander centered story with all the other characters that we had gotten in the movie already and not a Grindelwald Dumbledore love triangle story that it ended up being, which I
Well,
mean, not the
what a
worst
wild
thing,
take on
but
your part.
yeah, I know. I'm sure no one else thought that when they were watching the Fantastic Beasts movie. That was a completely original take that no one else has thought of before.
I mean, you were really going out like really in left field on just how could you possibly think that maybe these would be the main characters of this series?
I
Like,
know, right?
what I were
Why
you
why would
high?
we think that? Like, why they're definitely not the only people on the poster for all of the movie promotional stuff for the first movie. Like all it's funny because all the promo stuff for the first movie is like a lot of it is just Newt by himself walking through New York and
Yeah,
a few of the ones with the four characters on it. And then you switch over to the second and the third movie, and it's literally just all either like Johnny Depp or I refuse to refer to him as Grindelwald. He is Johnny Depp. Um, because he's not playing a character. He's playing Johnny Depp wears a multicolored contacts. That's what he's playing. And
I yeah. Yeah, I have no rebuttal to that at
yeah,
all
yeah.
because yeah, that
Wasn't
character
really
didn't land.
jiving.
Yeah, that character didn't
Yeah.
land for me. But I was actually an oddball, I think.
Mm,
Granted, I don't know how much of it I was predicting, but once we got to the end and to the Grindelwald reveal and that
yeah.
sort of thing, I was actually completely on board
For the Grindelwald
for
storyline.
particularly the Dumbledore and Grindelwald storyline because for me,
Yeah.
I honestly I consumed Harry Potter late,
Yeah.
hence the
We know this.
podcast. Yeah, this is not a shock to anyone,
Yeah.
but I remember distinctly one day waking up, the sun was shining through the sliding glass door next to my bed,
Oh, how beautiful.
obviously pre-child because I slept in until the sun came up,
And it was quiet.
and I didn't get out of bed immediately. I had a moment to
Mhm.
lay there and just think, and for whatever reason that morning, I was like, I wish I had more from that world to consume.
Uh-huh.
And I was thinking, what I want the Dumbledore story. I
Mm.
want the life and lies of Albus Dumbledore. I want that. That's the
Yeah.
content that I would love to consume next. That is what I would want. So the idea that these Fantastic Beasts movies could give that, I was like, dope. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I wasn't one of those people that wanted Pokemon with magic wands, personally.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so Dumbledore is my favorite character in the Harry Potter
I
series,
agree.
just for reference. And I definitely am totally on board with getting the life and lies of Albus Dumbledore as a movie, as like a fully fleshed out book, possibly. And I really love that storyline. And I love the kind of romance between Grindelwald and Dumbledore. So I'm totally on board with you too, like wanting that. I mean, it's
Hmm.
not, I'm referring to Mads Mikkelsen Dumbledore, not
I know.
Johnny Depp Dumbledore. That one. I like the romance between those two,
I
not the Johnny Depp one.
we
Uh,
may have a conversation that we can get into once we get to that movie because I
yeah,
think that we'll get there. We'll get there.
yeah.
But I would say
We'll get to
I
Johnny Depp.
I'm not, I wasn't that into that part of that movie, but not for
Yeah.
the reasons
So,
that people probably think
ooh,
from a
okay.
straight white guy because,
Okay, we'll get some
that's
hot takes on that.
cancelable already.
Yeah.
But
But yeah, no, I'm in the same boat as you, wanting that storyline between Dumbledore and Grindelwald and getting Dumbledore's backstory 100%. And I kind of was thinking what are they gonna do and where are they gonna take this to make this
Yeah.
interesting after the first movie? Because again, the first movie kind of wraps itself up in a
It-
nice little bow, and you really don't need a follow-up movie. You can watch it and like literally anyone can watch that movie without any context of anything. Like you could put someone who's completely oblivious to the Harry Potter universe in front of that movie, and they would probably be like, yeah, this was like a nice time. This was a nice, like, kind
This
of
was fun.
uplifting, fun movie in the end. And I liked it. There were little magic things that happened. And I laugh at the little giggle water thing that Jacob does in the middle of the bar every single time that I watch that movie. And then I call it a day. And I'm like, this is good. This is the end. We didn't really need a follow-up in the form of, like you said, magical creature Pokemon, more or less, which is kind of where
Yeah, and
it was kind of heading if you followed that Newt Scamander storyline, I think.
well, and that's also one, I think that's personally, I think that's why you couldn't just make them the focal point of
Yeah.
the series, because how interesting is that going to, like, how much uh what's
Like
the
how
word
much
I'm looking
content can
for?
you even like create from that? Because it's
Yeah, like,
just it's
yeah,
not rich in content, more or less.
no, like how much conflict can they come up upon just
Yeah.
trying to hunt but capture beasts as a,
Beasts.
and quote unquote save them and study them, as opposed
Yeah.
to, you know, killing for sport, which is not what he was doing. Like,
Yeah.
what are you, they gonna get involved with some feud with magical poachers? Like, what's
Oh.
that storyline really gonna be? And I was also on board. I have argued on this podcast with
Mhm.
no one,
Just
is
yourself.
yeah, just me arguing against the
Nothing. The
nothing,
wall.
the wall, literally the wall.
Yeah.
Uh,
I do that sometimes too.
I believe that Harry Potter, that whole series,
Mhm.
is the Dumbledore versus Voldemort series told through the eyes of Harry Potter.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
And
I feel like that Dumbledore uses Harry as a pawn essentially the entire book, which is why I find
yep,
Dumbledore so interesting because he's such a morally gray character. Like he's
right.
using Harry Potter as a pawn to save the world and do good, but he's also mentally and physically traumatizing a child and utilizing the child in the process of doing that
Yeah.
and literally using him as disposable. Um,
Yeah.
so it's that again, I like Dumbledore because he's complex and there's a lot happening there, and I find
Hmm.
that very interesting.
I completely
He's not
agree.
perfect.
No, and I was totally on board for Dumbledore versus Grindelwald told through the eyes of Newt Scamander. Like, I was
Yeah.
totally good with that direction. So I wasn't upset. Granted, I think the Grindelwald reveal at the end was problematic in the way that it was brought
And he
forth and
died
like
just a little.
described magically, and the weird, like, yeah, the weird Johnny Depp, like, you can't understand the line. That
You don't
doesn't,
know what there's so the people who do Puffs the Play. Have you heard
I'm
of that?
familiar. I haven't watched it. How's it?
Okay, you're gonna have to watch it at some point.
I
You're gonna
think
watch
it's
it, and
on
we're gonna do an
YouTube, right?
episode
Like, I
together.
can find it on YouTube. That's a
It's
thing, or do I have to
it's
go
on
somewhere?
Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
There are some
Okay,
high schools who have done the play, but honestly, I've watched those and I watched the Puffs one that the original cast did on the off Broadway production.
it's
Just
got
go
to be
spend
that.
the $15 on Amazon. You'll
Okay,
watch
that's
the,
it. Okay.
you'll keep going back to this act over and over again because there's such it's so funny.
I'm
Um,
down. I'm down to
but
watch that. I have not yet, and I
but
didn't know where,
yeah,
honestly.
Amazon Puffs to Play, but they did a parody of Fantastic Beasts. They said, "Dude," called "Dude, Where Are My Fantastic Friends?" Where they like get around all the IP things, but they have one guy who was playing Johnny Depp, and like he just kept popping up into scenes, being like, "Can we die just a little?" And would just like pop up and like come back down, and it was just like the funniest thing because that's such a like that line means nothing. Like that
Nothing.
line means absolutely nothing. Has no context for the movie. Like it literally means nothing.
Yeah, and it does, like, it, that doesn't make it a mysterious ending. It makes it a
No, it
what the
just
fuck are we doing here ending. Like, this is stupid. Like,
yeah,
so
yeah,
they,
uh-huh.
that movie was actually really good and like really well self-contained until
That
Johnny
exact
Depp
moment.
hits the screen.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
here's how I feel. I feel like I really love the first movie. I feel like the production company and the writers fucked up because they started it from the point of Newt Scamander and Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and they should have just like done that as a one-off and then started the Life and Lives of Albus Dumbledore,
Hmm.
or just not done that and started the whole thing as the Life and Lives of Albus Dumbledore and just like
Yeah.
started it from a point where we're just following Dumbledore and Grindelwald around, because that first movie could have just been a standalone and didn't need that weird didn't need the
No.
weird Grindelwald reveal at the end at all. They could have just had made up someone else as the villain. It literally
Yeah.
could have been like just like Mr. Bad Guy 101. Like that's literally what it could have been. And then just be like, okay, this is like how Star Wars does the one-off movies, like Rogue One. Like it's like a Rogue One of the Harry Potter series. They just kind of do it. It's self-contained. It's fine. It's a fun movie. Anyone can watch it. Like you can watch Rogue One and you don't really need background information, more or less. Like just to understand like, oh, Jedis and bad people. But and then they should have just started these movies as the Life and Lives of Albus Dumbledore and then taken it from there. I think they fucked up.
I agree with you on that. I also think, and I don't want to get into too much. I literally did an episode called "How to Save the Fantastic Beasts" franchise, so I don't want to go rehash too much of that. But I also think like even if you have this as an installment in the way that it was, I would have found the movie and the ending to be way more compelling if Graves was Grindelwald and it was like a backstopped like undercover thing that he'd been working on and infiltrated himself, and it wasn't essentially a Polyjuice knockoff like explanation at the end. Like I thought that cheapened it so much. I thought it was he's way more of a threatening character, an insidious character, if he was able to infiltrate the American wizarding government, rise to that level of prominence and power as an imposter, and not an imposter from like a physical appearance standpoint. He was just that good and that wicked and like that persuasive and cunning and stuff. Like which is what his character was supposed to be. Like that would have been a way stronger ending in my opinion, and something to build off of from there. But that's I think
they messed up the ending.
I think they messed up the ending. I also think that they messed up making this crux around Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, no, I agree too. That's kind of what I was saying too. Like they shouldn't have started it as Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, unless like again this was going to be a one-off.
Yeah,
but they should have literally just been like, this is about Albus Dumbledore. Like this
even
is
with even if it was the same exact movie, naming the franchise Fantastic Beasts paints you into a corner where beasts have to matter.
Yeah,
in
they
all
have
of
to
these
show
movies, and they don't after this one.
No, they don't. And it's funny, as we get into the second movie, we're going to see that they kind of fall back. And I think one of the things about the third movie that's the most interesting to me is because I'm so engrossed in the Harry Potter fandom, and you would never know that. No one would ever guess that. But I hear the opinions of many, many, many people. Also because I have a face that people like to talk to, and I guess an inviting tone of voice, which I don't know if that's true or not because my voice is weird. Or just distinctive. Like I start talking and people are like, oh, that's Juliana. It's like, yeah, it's me. Hi. I'm the problem. But I've heard a lot of opinions about like how they could have improved the Fantastic Beasts movies, like what fans wanted from them. And watching the third movie, it looks like they took the notes from all the people who were complaining, literally wrote them on a piece of paper and like checked them off as they went through the third movie, and were like, check, more beasts. Check, the beasts have a purpose in this movie. Check. Like literally I was sitting in the movie theater and I was like, had a mental checklist of the things that people had said and that like that I had heard multiple times over and over again that needed to be improved from the second movie. And people were just like, check. And one of them was the fact that in the second movie, they like literally don't use the beasts at all. And they're like not a context for them. And why did we keep calling this Fantastic Beasts? Because literally there are no beasts in the second movie that do really anything useful except for like work as unpaid slaves in the circus.
I think it's well, you know what, let's just get into Crimes and Grindelwald, because this is where the thing goes off the rails, right? Like this is the worst of the three, by a large margin. Like I literally wrote down the question, what went wrong, but I feel like it's such a long like what didn't.
Everything.
I mean, this is the movie that ruined the franchise for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And
Mm-hmm.
in addition to that, I was actually thinking about this. It is the single least rewatchable movie of anything related to Harry Potter.
Oh, 100%. It's
Completely.
you can't even as a really intense Harry Potter fan,
Hmm.
you can't even watch this movie without literally being like, what the actual fuck is happening?
I tried. I tried to rewatch it like a
You
few
can't.
times, and I'm like, this is
It's terrible.
garbage.
It's garbage
I
every
can't.
time. It makes no sense every single time. You like I used to be part of this other podcast called Speakbeasty. That's a Mugglenet podcast. Again, yes,
I've heard it.
Juliana has done like literally
Hmm.
everything. Uh, but we did some episodes where we broke the whole entire movie down, like scene by scene, because this is one of the books. So these movies have the scripts that go along with them. So
Hmm.
we like blocked it off like a scene by scene by scene.
Hmm.
And the consensus from everyone who did all this, and it took us a long time to do this because we did it on the podcast stuff. We literally were like, there's so much going on in each scene that's so disconnected from the next scene. And that
Nothing
was
makes sense.
like, it was just like tiny, tiny, tiny little like discombobulated movies all connected together.
Hmm.
And it just was a big old pile of shit.
It was. It was so disconjointed and made no sense, and so much
Mm.
was unneeded to
Oh
what
yeah,
the
you
plot
could
of the movie was supposed to end up. I think what we were supposed to take away once it was all said and done,
feel like
we
Grindelwald's
didn't
taking
need
over the
like any of it.
world, maybe.
Like it was so bad. But
And there's
before we do this, I
Daryl.
want a side note from you first.
Yes. Side notes.
Crimes of Grindelwald is the single most or least rewatchable movie in anything Harry
Yes.
Potter. What is
I
second?
second. Oh,
Second
okay.
least rewatchable.
I mean, honestly, probably the third Fantastic Beasts because the Harry Potter movies, like even the ones that like aren't great, like I don't like the fourth movie very much because it's like so cringy, and the
Mm.
hair from the fourth movie just makes me want to vomit up everything in my body. But but like it's still like it's a watchable movie. Like you can watch the fourth movie. I feel like any of the
Mhm.
Harry Potter movies, you can put them on and you are still like engaged by at least part of the movie, and they're still like pretty good. Like even like the seventh movie, like the first one where they spend a lot of time running through the forest, that's actually like one of the best movies, and it's like pretty good.
It's one of the
So
best adaptations. It
yeah,
might be the best adaptation from.
from a book to movie stand, I would say the
Yeah, I
first
think
movie
it's
is
the
probably
first one. Yeah,
I
I
think the
think it.
first I think Sorcerer's Stone is the best book to movie adaptation just because that's one, the
I
shortest
agree.
book,
Hmm.
and two, they like literally almost like line by line actually took
Yeah,
that book and turned it into a movie, even like giving the exact lines from the
yeah,
book into the movie, which they do with the other movies, but that one I feel like was just like you can either watch the movie or read the book, and you can start in the second book and you understand literally everything, even
yeah,
if you don't read the first book and just see the first movie.
yeah. There
So
was some streamlining, but the movie was the book. Like the
yeah, it
book
was
became
pretty.
the movie.
Yeah, that was
Um,
like I think that's the best adaptation. But yeah, even though the books, even the movies that are like arguably could be really boring are actually pretty good. I'm gonna have to say this the third Fantastic Beasts movie is probably the second least watchable like Warner Brothers made movie out of all things. If you want my real hot take, I think it's the Harry Potter musical, a Harry Potter musical, because that has not aged well. And there's quite a lot of things in there where I'm like, ooh, I just keep cringing. I'm like, ugh, because it was like early 2000s humor where like
mhm.
they got away with a lot of things that like would not float right now, and I just like I find myself being like
I think that's funny.
like the whole time.
That would probably make me like it more, but I haven't seen it.
Oh, okay, so you'll have to watch that at some point. Puffs and that
Yeah.
you'll have to watch it at some point and
Yeah,
give your hot take.
I admittedly have not dove into as much of the fan created
Mm,
content outside of this stuff. Like
yeah,
so
like the
many
Fantastic
podcasts.
Beasts stuff.
So many podcasts I've consumed, so many
Yeah,
like YouTube videos, like content creators in that way.
yeah,
Not like not a like I've never been a fan fiction guy, although
yeah.
I have pimped the James Potter fan fiction quite a bit on this podcast
Mm,
by Norman G. Lippert, I believe is the guy's
okay.
name. It's actually really good.
Hmm.
Um
I'll have to go
it gets
check
a
that
little
out.
wild, but
I
it's
mean,
really
have you
good.
read it? Yeah, as someone who hasn't read any other fan fiction, I can guarantee you that most fan fiction gets a
Oh,
little wild.
yeah, I think that was my problem. My aside from that one, which I found almost on accident,
Yeah.
when seeking out fan fiction to try to read some, I believe I got a poor luck of the draw because I tried a couple things and they were just absolute unreadable garbage that I hated so much. And I don't mean anything negative towards those people. I just was so
Yeah.
uninterested by line three that
Yeah.
I just didn't dive down that foray. I did watch the who did the Voldemort Origins of the Air or something like that,
Oh yeah, those little
like
movies
fan
that someone made
movie.
on into yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know who the creator was, but I have seen those too, which are
Yeah.
actually like arguably for a small production that I don't think had any funding behind it at all. Pretty good.
Yeah, they didn't get the audio. The version I watched didn't get the audio synced
Exactly
particularly
right.
well, but the rest of it, like I enjoyed it. I watched it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And, and
yeah,
I
yeah.
and I
You
had
watched
a
it to the end. You were
decent
like,
time.
"Oh, nice time."
Yeah.
I think for you,
Hmm.
one, I'm going to send you my fan fiction that I wrote about squid and
Do it.
toast, which is my number one OTP. My one true pairing is squid and toast.
Do it.
It's just a stupid little fan fiction. But you should also in your like lineup of things that you should watch. So we have Puffs, we have a Harry Potter musical. You should also indulge yourself in My Immortal, which is like the number
I
one Harry
can't.
Potter fan fiction.
Can't do it.
You
Can't do
can't?
it. I
Why
can't
not?
do it
Even if someone
because
read it to you?
I have listened to podcasts that have read
Ah, you have.
either
Okay, so you've
excerpts or
consumed
like
it.
read it out loud, like some not the whole thing,
But a
but
lot of
enough
it.
of it for me to be
Yeah.
like, I value my life more than that, and I will never get that time back.
It's funny because one of the conventions that I actually didn't go to called MistyCon, Jeff went to, but they did a live reading of My Immortal and the thing was they had to keep reading with a straight face and if you broke into a laugh or if you broke your straight face, you were out and it was a contest to see who could read it the
That's how
longest.
you do it.
Yeah, without like cracking up or like breaking the straight face because it is just the most bonkers ridiculous fan fiction in the entire
Yeah.
world and it's wild. It's a
Yeah,
wild time.
I think that's the problem. I actually want it to be good. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like if I'm gonna consume it, like I want it to feel like it was actually decent. Anyways,
Yeah.
we got
Anyway, side note.
sidetracked a lot. For me, it's actually Chamber of Secrets, by the way.
Oh,
That's my
okay.
hot take as the
Chamber
second
of Secrets
least
is my favorite
rewatchable.
movie.
I cannot stand that movie. Um,
I had that. So one time when I was little, we went to the Blockbuster.
mhm.
Yes, that was the thing.
I'm
For all
older
you
than you.
younger listeners out there.
Mhm.
But we went to the Blockbuster and my mom was like, "Oh, everyone can buy because I have three other siblings, one VHS tape, and that's
Mhm.
going to be like something we'll put in our VHS library." And so what I bought was Chamber of Secrets. So I have watched the Chamber of Secrets movie like way too many times to the point where I don't realize I know all the words to the movie until you put it on and I can like literally say every single thing along and I can tell you exactly where you are in the movie because I have seen that movie no less than like 200 times.
So for
So,
you, there's actually a little bit of a sentimental value for that
yeah.
particular movie. I
Yeah.
think for me, just putting it in the lineup, I'm like, I can
It's fair.
go 1 to 3 and not feel like I missed anything
Yeah,
in
for the
terms
most
of just
part.
like enjoying watching. I think
Yeah.
Chamber of Secrets in a lot of ways is like it's
Like a
almost like a
filler.
it's almost like a regurgitation of the first movie,
Yeah, that's
like
fair.
first in a lot of ways, but worse.
Yeah.
and it just and I don't think that they I think there was a I think there was a jump in acting ability for most of the cast from 2 to 3.
Yes. Oh, definitely 100%. Yeah. And what's his Alfonso Cuarón. I couldn't think of his first name. Alfonso Cuarón, I feel like definitely challenged the kids a little bit more in the third movie
Perhaps.
to grow as actors.
Yeah, it
And
could
I
be.
think that's a good thing too.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's by far not my favorite like movie of the three, but I think there's a clear difference when you go
Hmm.
from watching 2 to watching 3 in the
Yeah.
like skills and ability of the actors. In one, you don't care.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One's like
Yeah.
the
They're kids.
sentimental dive into the world, their children.
Yeah, they're cute. That's all
Two,
that matters.
exactly. Like 2 is like, oh, so we haven't gotten any better at anything,
Yeah.
have we? Our voice just
Yeah.
cracks a little more.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. That's where
Yeah.
we are. And then 3, it's like, oh, okay, here's some progress, here's some growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it continues from
Kind of
there.
just keeps going. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair. I will
But
say
that's
that that,
my
that that's a fair hot take. I'll
mm.
take that.
I have at least rewatched Secrets of Dumbledore willingly on its own as a standalone movie. I would
Yes.
not rewatch Chamber of Secrets on its
Oh,
own
okay.
as a standalone movie.
I've rewatched
If I
both.
watched the season like or the series, I
Yeah.
wouldn't skip it.
Mm-hmm.
I would watch them in order. But if I was just like, I want to watch a Harry Potter movie,
You would go
0
for
out of 100 times am I going to choose Chamber of Secrets to
just
just
Chamber of
sit down and
Secrets.
watch it.
Yeah,
I
that's
have
fair.
chose Secrets of Dumbledore to sit down and watch it. It was on an airplane, actually.
Oh, nice.
Okay, so
So, movie 2.
here's all right. Maybe I should do this. I don't know if we should try to take these one at a time or if I should just drop the list on you
Uh-huh.
of like what I found so problematic about this movie and we can just riff on whatever we want to do.
Yeah, go for it.
Maybe we do it that way cuz if not this is going to be a 4-hour podcast.
Yeah.
This is my list that came to me in literally like 5 minutes of just frantic I hate this movie notes.
Which is fair and valid because again, this movie is trash. Like
Yeah,
it's hot. As someone who like legitimately likes the Fantastic Beasts movies, like on the whole, just because 2 out of 3 of them are good-ish, at least. Um, this movie is hot flaming trash.
oh my gosh. All right. And I'm going to read them verbatim that I have
Okay, go
written down.
for it. Go for it.
Lita Lestrange.
Yes.
Why?
Why? Yeah, I think the big question there is literally just like, why is she
Why
a
does she
character in this
exist?
movie? This is
Yeah.
I also note too, this is the movie of characters that get added in and taken out within the same exact movie that have no context and have like literally they did not need to be there.
No, none. Like
Nagini, why?
that's
Like,
1, 2, 3, 4 notes from now is literally
yeah,
Nagini. Why? The ones
yeah,
between it are Baby Swap storyline. Why?
why? Yeah,
Prophecy storyline.
why?
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 Yusuf Kama.
Why?
Why?
Why? We don't need him.
Nagini. Why?
Why?
And then it gets to be a little bit more substance.
Mm,
Queenie. Rape, completely stupid, absolute departure from her character that was established in the first
yeah.
movie. What happened to Queenie?
Yeah, that's kind of a thing that carries into the third movie too, which is just like there's no explanation as to like why all of a sudden she's like, and now I'm going to have children and I'm going to mentally control this man who clearly tried to love me, but like it's not enough for me, I guess.
She's a complete I don't
He's
even
not the same person.
know. Like it's not a de-evolution. It's not a devolving character. It's not a like
No,
it literally
it's just a
is
different
not
character
the same
altogether.
character at all.
Yeah. Literally
I
they
don't
were
know.
like they came back and they were like, okay, this is your lines and Allison said, what's her last name? I'll just call her Allison. The actress who's
Mhm.
playing Queenie, she literally came back and was like, "Am I playing a different character? Because like,
Yeah, who is
who
this?
is this again?
Yeah.
Are we introducing another new character to this movie that doesn't exist at the end of this movie? Maybe,
Yeah.
possibly."
Yeah, so that's a big one for me.
Agreed.
Tina, mad at Newt for a stupid like article mistake that one sentence of dialogue fixes. Like why do we have
Yeah,
manufactured tension for this
no reason.
yeah, like impending relationship? There's no
Yeah.
reason for it. They're actually more interesting characters when
hmm
they're together. They both kind of suck when they're on their own.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that too. They're good playing off of each other.
Yeah,
And those moments we have with them together, like when they're in the French Ministry of Magic together,
right.
like that's actually kind of a good part of the movie because those two actors, like you can tell how much um the actress playing Tina and the actor playing Newt, like actually genuinely like being together and having a
Hmm.
fun time just acting.
Yeah.
But by themselves, yeah, they're boring. Like Tina is boring. Newt is like cutesy and like kind of fun, but Tina is like boring
They are not compelling characters when they are on
by
their own.
themselves. Yeah.
What saves Newt in a lot of circumstance for me, what saves Newt as a character in like this whole thing is that he always either has Tina or Jacob to play off of. to make him
Yes.
interesting.
Yes.
He is not interesting when he's on his own.
Jacob is, I think, my favorite character in the Fantastic Beasts movies, just because he's interesting, he's funny, he always has something to say. He's a little bit more complex than we think he is. And he does actually make the scenes where Newt could be like excessively boring, actually pretty funny. And
Yeah.
that is something that carries through. I think he is one of the few things in the second movie where it's like he checks all the boxes. He's fine,
Yeah.
and there's nothing really terrible happening with the Jacob storyline from what I can remember. Nothing offensive, super crazy, like from his standpoint.
Yeah.
Queenie controlling him is not his doing.
Yeah,
Um,
that's not a character issue for him.
yeah, that's an like a something that's
Maybe
put
his
upon him.
reaction to it. It's a little bit
Yeah,
annoying how piney he gets after it, like,
yeah.
you know, where it's like,
I mean,
I
everyone is
don't
just
know.
weird. Everyone in this whole movie is just weird. Like, it's just no one is the same as they were in the first movie.
Yeah.
We get all these unnecessary characters who like literally come in and leave before the end of the movie. We don't even
Yeah.
get real reasons as to why these people are leaving, why they chose Grindelwald.
Why
Is
they
we
exist in the first damn place? Like, what
Yeah, and
purpose did they serve there anyway?
the number of arguments I have heard about is Lita Lestrange dead or alive is too many at this point,
I
and
literally did not care.
I don't care. I don't. She literally, this woman came in like we love Zoe Kravitz. She's great. She's great in other movies, but this is just a character that we did not need, and we could
No.
have very easily, along with the use of Kama storyline, along with the use of Kama himself, because in Secrets of Dumbledore he also does like literally nothing, and
And it also, I'm sorry, but once we get to that, like, I have a
yeah,
whole other problem with him in that movie.
yeah,
Like,
no,
the
same.
thing not making any sense. But
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's just, I think, to me, the thing that the second movie is, it is a showcase as to how much JKR fucking sucks as a screenwriter. And that's that. So
yeah. Yeah, that, I think that pretty much checks out. I think
yeah.
it's, yeah, I think it's clear that there are two different skill sets that it takes to write a successful novel series and a
Yes.
successful movie franchise.
And they're
And
different
they
skill
are
sets.
completely different skill sets. And it
Yes.
was trying to cram too many things
Mm-hmm.
into like one cohesive structure that was never cohesive as a
Yeah.
result of all of the thing. Like,
Yeah.
in order to make that, in order to make whatever was supposed to be conveyed work, you needed a 400-page novel.
Oh, yeah, no, I totally agree. My biggest takeaway and my biggest like point that I will stand on, and the hill that I will die on around Fantastic Beasts is that I think Fantastic Beasts should have been a book series
Yeah.
instead of a TV series, instead of a movie series, because you can I describe it as looking at a city through the fog in a distance. Like you can kind of see the outline of the city, and like that's what the movies are. They're like a city that's kind of fogged over, and what we needed to do was push the fog out of the way and get all those little details that you can see once the fog is gone and create the books, because you can see like what JKR was kind of like, the storyline she was starting and where she kind of wanted to go with these characters, but because it's an hour and a half to 2 hour movie,
Yeah.
she couldn't really flesh that out. And you're right, it should have been like a 500 to 600 page book where all those complex storylines could have very easily been integrated into the story,
Yeah.
because
And actually makes
that's
sense.
what happens in a book is you have more complex and more just in-depth storylines
Yeah.
than you do in an hour and a half to 2 hour movie, and that's just how it is. And she just sucks as a screenwriter, and that's just it, and it's frustrating
Yeah.
because they gave her all that liberty.
Yeah, I'll leave it with this. Prophet McGee. Why?
Yeah
We don't need
Why?
to do math, but like,
No.
why?
Why
Why?
Okay,
Secrets of Dumbledore.
here we go.
The attempt at course correction through controlled confusion, which is literally what they made the plot about, which is a
Yep.
whole other thing.
Yeah.
This is where, like, one, your crux of the beast comes back to bite you because the baby deer shit didn't make anything make any more sense. And if you took that out of the movie, all the baby deerness,
Yeah,
Like,
it would have been better.
it would have been a better movie
Hmm.
just without it. So why? Not. Nope. Use of
Yeah.
comma. We were
Why?
just on that.
We didn't need him. He could have
We
he should have died with Lita Lestrange in the second movie, and then we could have just left him completely out of this.
He should have died on the editing floor of the second movie. But
Yeah,
they
valid.
even just his like allegiance to Grindelwald or whatever, and well, he still hates you for killing his sister, and oh, we're gonna pull every memory you have out of about your
Yeah,
sister.
so you're
Wouldn't it
fine.
be one fucking memory?
It
Because
should
in the
be.
last movie, they established they've not met each other.
Yeah, it'd be the memory of them meeting, and then the memory of his dad, like switching, like all that stuff with his dad. So
But
they
that's
take
not his
like literally
sister.
two. No, it's not. Oh yeah, you're right. No, it's not.
They're
That's
talking
the
about Lita, right? Like they're
yeah,
talking about Lita. He didn't know Lita
yeah.
in the
No,
second movie. Am I losing my mind? As soon as they
no,
said that, I was like, why does he care? He
he
doesn't know
shouldn't.
her.
He shouldn't. He really shouldn't, and he really just shouldn't even be there because he is like just standing.
He
He
offers nothing.
literally the guy who plays him is standing in the back of scenes. I mean, good for him for getting a paycheck, honestly.
Yeah.
But like it's just standing in the back of scenes as a prop.
Yeah.
And that's
And
it.
from my understanding, like one thing that I have heard is the actor has come out after the movie and said that
Mhm.
there was context for his character shot that was
Oh
edited
yeah.
out of the movie.
Oh, I
So
totally
like
believe that.
from his perspective, it's kind of like, okay, I mean that part sucks, but
Yeah.
at the same time, it couldn't have been one, it couldn't have been that compelling or they wouldn't have deleted it because they needed everything compelling they could possibly get to save this franchise and it still didn't work.
Yeah.
And two, you shouldn't have been in the movie to start with.
No, he shouldn't have been in the
So
movie. I mean, I feel like this movie is a movie of edits of like post filming, very post filming edits. Because if you watch the last scene from this movie, it is very edited. Like you can tell that some things were like recut. You can
mhm.
tell that like the reactions are not quite what they should be to what's happening in the previous like panel, in the previous like little nugget of that we just saw. And you can see that in my opinion, it looks like Tina was supposed to be in that scene. And then we had the whole thing with Catherine, who plays Tina, not wanting to be part of the movie anymore. And then
Which is
her like really weird red carpet appearance that was just bizarre.
well,
Uh,
that's the thing. I did not delve into that part of
yeah,
everything. So it was
yeah,
very, for me, it was very stark and very awkward the way that she was and
just
wasn't
at
in
the
the
end.
film.
Yes. No,
Yeah.
so the thing that's confusing as well too, Catherine Waterston never actually stated exactly why she was not part of the movie. I mean, it definitely has to do something with JKR's views and her transphobia and things like that. But there was never like a statement from Catherine Waterston saying like, "Oh, I don't want to be part of the movie because X, Y, and Z, and so I'm choosing to only do the things that I signed a contract for, like walk the red carpet for this thing, and then I'm only saying like the minimum of what I have to say, and then I'm like doing my due diligence, like doing my like 1-2 step, and
You
then
can't sue
stepping
me.
away."
Like,
Yeah, yeah, like
essentially.
I'm gonna do what I signed up for, but only the bare minimum of what I signed up for, and then I'm walking away from this, and you can never talk to me again, pretty much. And like, yeah, we get that weird interaction with them at the end of the movie, and that's like literally it. And in my opinion, when we get that reveal in the end of the Dumbledore versus Grindelwald kind of duel thingy at the end of the movie, and we get the reveal that Bunty is in that green, like hooded thing, to me, it looks like it should have been Tina, but that's just me because that
Mm.
would have made sense if it was Tina, if she was off doing like fighting. Because so many people were like, "Oh, she's off fighting something else. She's gonna come back at the end. She's gonna tell us what's going on." I was like, she's not part of anything. Like Catherine Waterston has like fully removed herself from everything. Like I don't know who you are thinking that she's coming back, but
Yeah, that's the weird thing too, where it's like I would have understood if she was just out,
mm-hmm.
but
Yeah,
then and they had to write it in awkwardly of like, well, she's got a lot to do.
yeah,
Okay. Um,
yeah. She's so
but
busy.
they show her in the weird voting thing. They have like the one close up of her standing,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
literally just standing.
Yep.
And
She's
then
there.
she shows up at the end for the little like wedding thing, and it's kind of like, well, clearly you were in the movie.
Yeah.
So
It's just
like
only the
the
bare minimum.
yeah, it felt very misplaced within the movie. Like I understand they want like obviously they had her signed for a reason and they wanted to exploit whatever they could out of
Yeah.
like whatever, but they were paying her whatever. But I almost like your movie's probably better if you just take that out.
I know they should have just done what they did with Johnny Depp and just like pay out whatever they had to pay out in the contract that they had with that person and then just let
Yeah,
them go.
yeah, it
Just
would
be
have
like,
been.
thank you for your time. You don't want to do this anymore. It's a waste of our time to fit you in a way that makes no sense.
Yeah, it
Here's your
just
check. Have a nice life.
yeah, because then everybody like, look, we are nerds, right? Like this
Yes.
is a nerddom. This isn't a fandom. It's a
No.
nerddom. We
Yeah.
the reason that Prof
Destroy things with our
McGee,
brains.
yeah, like the reason that Professor McGonagall being in these movies was such a big problem is because nerds do the math.
Yeah. And we know her birthday and we're like, that doesn't check out. Who do you think you are putting her in there as
Well,
like a
even just like
30-year-old?
there's a line in Order of the Phoenix where she tells Professor Umbridge that she's been working here for 35 years in what 1994
Yeah.
or whatever. Like
I mean, we're the fandom too, where they're like, what happened to the
this
missing
isn't
day between when Harry's house
I
burnt down and when he got taken to the Dursleys and all the little tiny number things.
yeah,
Shout out to the Ravenclaws out there.
and you
But everyone is just like really on top of this. And I mean, who David Heyman, David Gates, I think it's David Gates, whoever wrote this, directed this movie, where is your brain? Like you should know this fandom by now, and you should know that we are going to hyper analyze everything because that's exactly what we did with the Harry Potter movies. I was the kid who came out of the Harry Potter movie, the fourth one specifically, I can remember the most. And I was like, where was Spew? Where was all these things?
yeah.
I can't believe they cut this out. And they know us. Like
Well,
they should know us by now.
yeah, I
Like what the
that
heck?
yeah, and like you're gonna have nerds know like she has the same job as Theseus and he's in it, so he's not
That's
so busy.
that was my big point
Like
too, was like, why isn't Tina there if Theseus literally has the exact
they're
same
the same
job
person. Yeah.
and he has the time to be there, but Tina
Yeah.
doesn't, but she's in love with Newt, but she doesn't, and she would probably come willingly and they had to like drag Theseus along
Y-
essentially. So it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I don't have it.
2 + 2 is equaling like 7 right now. So
Yeah. All right. So now we can get to the Grindelwald of it all. Um
yes, Johnny Depp versus actual Grindelwald.
I think it's clear that you are at least a fan of Mads over Johnny Depp, but were you a
Yeah.
fan of Mads as Grindelwald just period? Like was that a thing
Yeah,
that you
I think he played a really good Grindelwald because Grindelwald should be like akin to Hitler in the
Yeah.
way that he's mentally manipulative. He
Yeah.
is charismatic and he makes you do things that he wants you to do that are technically like bad things
Mhm.
because he's so compelling as a human and he is just relatable in like a weird condescending way. And I feel like Mads Mikkelsen did a really good job of conveying that aesthetic
Mhm.
and not just being like Johnny Depp being like, "Hello, I am Grindelwald," and it's like literally like, "Dude, what are you doing? Like, what the hell are you doing? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
So,
I agree with you. I think
mhm,
that Mads is a more compelling character as Grindelwald.
yes,
Um, I think that he is a more captivating villain as
yeah,
Grindelwald than what Johnny
yeah,
Depp played.
mm-hmm,
Um, I still didn't really care about the character all that much. Like it was a character that I felt didn't I don't know. I didn't care. And
yeah,
then they made the choice that they made for him and Dumbledore and that storyline and leaning in as heavily as they did into the romantic aspect of that
mm,
relationship, and it turned me off of it.
mm. See, that's I liked the romantic side of things, but
I did not.
I think they should have leaned in more. I was waiting for them to like
Ugh.
kiss or something.
No, it it turned me off. And here's why.
Mm-hmm.
It is not
Tell me why.
because of the depiction of the characters being in love with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I was fine with that.
Yeah.
I felt it broke canon, and I felt that it was a retcon. I
How
felt that they
so?
were trying to drive that point home so hard. It almost felt to me like an overcorrection for
Hmm.
representation
I
in
will
lack
say
thereof previously, where I was like, this, it did not feel genuine to the characters
this to me,
in
I
canon.
feel uh I will agree with you in that this felt like a Dumbledore's gay moment, when we had JKR being like, well, Dumbledore was gay the whole time. That's kind of what it felt like to me, where they were like, oh, well, they were in love the whole time. Like, didn't you know? And yeah, I agree that it felt like an overcorrection for like
Yeah.
kind of like slightly internalized homophobia for a good portion of things. I mean, we don't get any queer characters really throughout the entire Harry Potter books,
Yeah.
which is kind of like just a shame and an abomination because Dumbledore runs around in like purple like glittery dress robes. Like
Well,
who
I think,
like what in what world is that like a fully like straight cis man?
yeah, I
What
am
world?
not, and I am definitely not anti Dumbledore's gay by any
Yeah.
stretch of the
Oh
imagination.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like,
But
no,
like
this is,
JKR definitely she
yeah,
retcons that in. And I feel like I agree that the fact like this part of the movie feels like
I
it was
don't,
retconned a little bit.
I'm personally one of those people that is like what you like, be, love,
Yeah.
do your thing. So that wasn't my issue with this. I thought that
Yeah.
they took it too far in
Mm-hmm.
terms of that relationship based on the actual text and canon that we already had in the
Yeah.
Harry Potter books when Dumbledore explained that relationship as lasting only, I can't remember if it was 1 month or 2 months.
Yeah. It's pretty short in the
It is
actual explanation in the book.
super short. They were 16 and 17 years old,
Yeah.
respectively.
And now
Like,
they're like way older.
right, in these movies, they are like in their 50s, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's
It's been a hot minute.
so you're trying to tell me. And also, I actually took into consideration with my interpretation of it what was said afterwards by
Mm-hmm.
the author about how um in her mind at that time, I guess, Dumbledore was in love with Grindelwald for that short period.
Yeah.
Grindelwald was manipulating and taking
Mm-hmm.
advantage of that and
Mm-hmm.
didn't actually reciprocate those feelings.
Yeah.
That all checked out in my head as to how that would have gone down
Yeah.
in what they had. Like, I'm like, I follow all of that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that makes sense to me. It also makes sense to me why Dumbledore would kind of go a little bit further in the like direction that he went as a kid in terms of like, we're gonna, rule over the muggles and whatnot
Yeah.
to kind of like
Oh,
be,
yeah.
edgy with
Impressed
this
Grindelwald.
dude, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that made sense in my mind, but then to turn around in the Fantastic Beasts and have them still like fawning over each other and like we were so
Yeah.
in love and we were so like and we're still in love with each other and we're gonna like touch hearts and
Yeah.
there's gonna be a couple of times where we're gonna like almost make out and shit and it's like I don't feel like you build that kind of connection at 16 and 17 over a
Like a
3 week
2 month
period. Like,
period.
yeah,
Yeah.
make it a maximum of 2 months. 2 months
Yeah.
is how long you were sleeping with that person in college before you realized you didn't have anything in common with each other outside of the bedroom. Like,
Yeah.
that
It's
is
valid.
not like that's not what you like. I don't, to
You don't
me,
spend like 40 years thinking about that for the rest of your life, you
in
know?
my interpretation of it, yes. And I
Yeah.
have been just crucified on social media for that take. And people that are like, I totally would. If you are that person that gets that deep in 3 weeks, like whatever it is, like,
Yeah.
then
I mean,
that's
yeah,
fine. That's
do what
you.
you
And you
do.
can interpret it that way. For me, I did not interpret them that way. And so
Hmm.
what was then on the screen in Secrets of Dumbledore, I was like, oh, you really, really, really leaned into that way
Yeah.
harder than I thought made sense because I thought the blood pact thing was
Hmm.
actually a really, really good explanation for why Dumbledore hadn't tried to step in sooner. And
Hmm.
it wasn't just because like, oh, I was so in love with him and I can't.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, because I don't feel like that would have held up to me, but having a magical object in the way, I
Yeah.
was like,
Makes
that's
sense.
actually, yeah, like all of that actually makes everything line up in my head.
Yeah. I mean,
It,
so I will
it
agree
just
with
didn't land
so
for me.
yeah, I agree with you in the fact that I feel like they were retconning and kind of just like ticking off a box that they needed to tick off. Because again, I
Yeah,
feel like I enjoyed Secret Dumbledore,
I
but
did
I
too.
feel like I said, like I had a list in my head of things that they were like actively checking off
Yeah,
boxes, and like more LGBTQIA plus representation was one of those boxes that literally
yeah.
I could see like David Gates being like, check,
Mm-hmm.
check, check,
Good
and
job.
literally just watching his movie and making sure he checked off these things, like more beasts, check, more LGBTQIA plus representation, check, wrap up a little bit of the Queenie and Jacob story, check, and just all these
Get
things
rid
that
of Credence.
yeah,
Find a way to get rid
yeah.
of Credence.
Kill Credence because Ezra Miller is a terrible person, check,
What are we supposed to do with this Aurelius Dumbledore crap?
yeah,
Check.
check. Yeah.
Yeah,
Literally,
I.
I was just sitting I had my mental checklist, like literally just like
Mhm.
check, 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 check. And this was one of the check boxes that I think they checked off, was just like more queer
I
representation,
agree.
which
And
is a great thing. We'd love to see it, but it
yes,
does feel a little bit forced. I agree with that too,
yes,
in this exact scenario, given the background knowledge that we have on
exactly.
these two guys as a couple.
If
So
we didn't have that excerpt from Dumbledore in
yeah,
Deathly Hallows explaining this in a completely different way
yeah,
than what was acted out, and I would have been like, "Oh, that's a really compelling storyline. I'm
yeah,
glad that we got some of,"
yeah,
but that is not. And it also could have explained a little bit of that, like if they just hinted towards Dumbledore and Grindelwald in Deathly Hallows
yeah,
that they had something
yeah.
and didn't actually explain what they had,
Yeah, that's
this
pretty
whole
just
thing
fair right there.
actually lands. Yeah, like and it's
Yeah,
actually a really cool story.
yeah,
It
yeah, I
just
agree.
didn't for me. But
That's fair.
it was far from the worst thing, far from the worst thing in the franchise, and
Yeah,
not the worst thing in the movie, but it just took me
no,
out of it.
this is one of those things where age is kind of forgotten more or less, because if this had
Hmm.
happened maybe like, I don't know, when they were like, say they were together for 2 months when they were 16, and then we get their storyline when they're 18 or something like that, this would
Yeah,
make sense that they're coming back to this little romance, but they're like literally like 20 to 30 years later,
yeah,
and it makes no sense to hold
it
on
doesn't.
to that long.
Yeah.
And it just, I
Well,
think the age isn't, it's kind of like where we're looking at like the movie versus the book as well too, where we see like the book characters are technically like in their 20s, and like
yeah,
James Potter is like what, like 21 when
yeah,
he gets murdered,
yeah.
but we kind of see them in the movies portrayed as people like in their like late
In their 40s.
30s, in
Yeah,
their
they were.
40s, like Snape
Yeah,
is like 50 or whatever when he's supposed to be like literally like
30 years old.
25. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's like somewhere in that age range, like
Hmm.
we're kind of where you and I are,
Yeah.
where he's not Ellen Rickman. He's
No,
not at all.
no.
And it's just, I think we get age lost again, like with the
Yeah.
McGonagall thing too. It's like they just don't pay
She looks
attention.
really, really good for a fetus. Like she
I
looks
mean,
really,
honestly, I
really,
wish
really
I looked
great
that
for an
good.
egg. You
Yeah.
know,
I would
like
have been really killing it out here if I came out of the womb looking like that.
she was really, really developed
Yeah.
prior to being fertilized. Like really, really good.
Her poor mother. Like that must
Right.
have been
Like how did?
terrible. Like,
Oh my
carrying on like a
gosh.
140-pound woman
Yeah, it just came
in your
out fully
stomach.
grown.
Sounds awful. I don't wish
Yeah.
that upon myself.
But I
Um,
think, and we spent a lot of time on it, and it certainly wasn't meant to be like just anti that relationship. But I think it
uh-huh.
does actually. I think it tells a story that I think that franchise really, really, and really the whole Harry Potter universe kind of
Hmm.
falls on is
It
like
wants.
these characters are like almost incapable of independence in so many ways.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
everything falls back to some sort of like romantic tie or like some
A
sort of
prophecy
love
or
tie
something.
and in a yeah like
Kind of like this, like it almost feels like there is like almost like a Bible or like a spiritual book or something that like everything falls back. There's like, it's just, yeah, there's like some kind of like lore, I guess, a lore that everything falls back to, whether it's the lore of like a love between two people, the lore of like a prophecy, the lore of like something that
which is
happened in the
love.
past. Yeah, which is love. And I
Well,
feel
like,
like there's just all this connection to like some kind of lore, more or less, and it all
yeah,
kind of boils down to like, okay, and it's never really fully clear as to what exactly happened sometimes in this lore, which is kind of typical. Like, that's why I kind of reach for the Bible a little bit too, because the Bible, Friends, is a collection of stories that were told to friends, and the friends wrote them down, and there are a lot of hearsay.
well,
So
and I mean, Harry Potter is Jesus Christ with a magic wand.
yeah,
Like
so
he
it all kind of
literally has a
again get back.
resurrection. Like
Yeah,
it
back
was very
to
influential
lore.
to the series. But I mean, I like this relationship, which is really funny because I think romantic relationships were the weakest part of the Harry Potter series.
Oh,
But
100%.
everything like these characters are incapable of independence without them in so many cases. Tonks
Hmm.
completely falls apart because of a guy.
Yeah.
Like Dumbledore and Grindelwald can't possibly have moved on with their lives and been like their own people. They have to be just still
Yeah.
fawning over each other.
Hmm.
Queenie just can't possibly like
Be alone without Jacob.
yeah, or they can't just be together without
No.
getting married because they
Yeah.
say we can't, and she's gonna go turn to the bad side because we need to get. I love you so much, I'm gonna be evil. Snape can't possibly get over a high school crush that didn't want like
That
and
is the one that
dedicate.
murders me the most. Like,
Like
I can't.
it's
I literally can't
everywhere.
with Snape. I
It's
can't.
everywhere, and I think that Fantastic Beasts had it worse because there
Hmm.
also weren't books to like let things breathe and let
Yeah.
things develop. It was literally just all in our face in these three movies where it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
once you get past the first one, it's just it's I have to have my
It's a
Tina
mess.
and Newt, like I have to have her Jacob
Hmm.
trying to get Queenie. I have to have her
Yeah.
Dumbledore. I have to have Grindelwald. The Lita stuff, like who's she really in love with? Like it
Yeah. Oh my
all
God.
just
I'm so over Leta Lestrange arguments, honestly. I'm so over them.
which is a great place to end this franchise. And I want to ask now, I want to go
Hmm.
back. Was it that bad, or was it just not what you expected it to be?
I think I have two opinions. Movie
Go.
two, it was that bad.
It was so
Um,
that bad.
it was that bad. Don't don't waste your time. No one watch it unless you're like it's the only thing you can watch on an airplane, which I don't know why that would be the case. Or you're being tortured in a torture chamber. But I think that the on the whole, I am in the camp that it just was not what we expected it to be because they said it was going to be Fantastic Beasts. That's what they named it, but that's not the actual plot line that was being followed throughout the movies on the whole. So, and I think the points that we have issues with are the points that devolve from the canon that we know or aren't along the storyline that we wanted exactly. So I think that that also speaks to it's not like terrible, but it's definitely not what we wanted as fans from this series, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
I think I'm for the most part with you.
Yeah,
I think there's more in it that is better than what you probably remember based on
agree.
your
Yeah.
reaction to
Yes.
it not being what you expected it to be, particularly after the first movie came out.
Yes. I
Like
agree.
it set a stage and a precedent that was not then followed through,
No.
and it that follow through was poor.
Yes.
So it made it all seem way, 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 way worse than it was. And ultimately, one bad movie squeezed in between two decent movies ruined everything.
Yeah. Unarguably, the second movie fucked over the whole franchise.
So bad.
Yeah,
So
that
bad.
was we knew that that was the end. I mean, I don't know if everyone knew, but I knew personally as a human being, and other people in the Harry Potter space who are Fantastic Beasts fans were like, Juliana, how can you be so negative and so mean about these movies? I'm like, literally, like this movie was shit. I don't think that they're gonna get past the third movie at all. And we watched the third movie and they wrapped it up in a nice little bow. And I was like, this is the end. And people were like arguing with me. I'm like, you can argue with me all you want because now we're in the current space that we are right here on August 20th, 2023. And guess what? There's
Canceled.
not another
Yeah.
Fantastic Beasts movie. So sorry, just being realistic over here. Not negative, just realistic.
Yeah. And that was funny because I actually came away from Crimes of Grindelwald feeling like I was in the minority that I didn't think it was that bad. And I was rooting
Yeah.
for the franchise, and I was rooting for that, like, in general, that overarching storyline. So I was like, man, people are shitting all over this thing, and like, it just.
Yeah.
And then I sat with it, and then I tried to rewatch it, and I was like, oh, no, this is just garbage.
Yeah. 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 I think the more times you rewatch it, the more you're like, oh yeah,
This
I can
is
see
just so
exactly
bad.
why this stopped the franchise like in its tracks right here.
Yeah, it was a
Because
complete
yeah.
disaster. And I
One
think
of the
that's where
things,
we end that. Like,
yeah. I think that's so we've decided we like the Fantastic Beasts movies on the whole, but the second
ish.
one is shit. And they just weren't exactly what we expected them to be, more or less.
Yep. Yep. Perfect.
Good summary. I
Absolutely
like it.
perfect.
I like it. Okay. Well, hopefully the listeners will also let you know too what their hot takes are on this, and you can also hear out what they have to say, because I'm sure anyone who's listening to this is probably screaming into the abyss as to what their opinions are.
If they're still listening, yes,
Yes,
they
if you're
are.
still here.
If you're still listening at this point, belatedbinge.com has a leave a voicemail icon on it.
Oh,
Please do it and scream at me about how I ruined everything for you and how it was actually the greatest franchise ever or whatever. I want to hear it.
I didn't know you had a
Give it to
voicemail
me.
feature, and
I
now
do.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to like the ones that I haven't listened to yet.
Do it.
Um, and I'm going to have to scream into the void and like record it and leave you a voice message.
Do it. I tend to I figure out how usually I have to do it in some form of like a almost like a mailbag type of a thing to get them
Yeah,
in, but I like if it's audible and playable, I will figure out a way to make it into an episode somehow.
fun.
So,
We love it.
do it.
Yeah.
All right, this was fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on, Zach. It was very nice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess real quick, plug your stuff. Whatever you
Yeah.
want to plug it.
Yeah. So if you want to find me, you can find me mostly on Instagram at Jelly like grape jelly, _runs on Instagram. That's where I usually hang out. And if you'd like to hear my dulcet tones somewhere else, and this didn't fully turn you off from my very distinctive sounding voice, you can hear me and my best buddy Jeff on Into the Fold, the podcast about the Grishaverse, which is the books that the Shadow and Bone series on Netflix is based off of, and it's a book club style review. So we go like chapter by chapter, and we are reading through the books, and you can read along with us at whatever pace you'd like. And if you'd like to start from the beginning, you can. You want to start from Six of Crows, which is what we're doing now, which you actually can, technically speaking, if you want to start with the fourth book, because you can read that book as a standalone, and it's fine. You don't need the other books if you read that one as a standalone, but you can join us there too. But yeah, that's where and if you live on Cape Cod, come and run with me, because I'm gonna do a lot of like running events here on Cape Cod. So if you just happen to be in the area, come and hit
Yeah.
me up. Say like, hey, I heard you on Belated Binge, and I'll be like, cool.
Well, thank you for slumming it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me on. This was a much overdue, very pleasant, fun thing to do. So I'm excited.
Cool.
Yay.
The Belated Binge Podcast.